Greetings. This is General CJG here, coming to you with the first Expanded Universe podcast ever since we finished the Defending the Prequels podcast series. And this time, joining me here is.
Jedi Knight Luke Warren back again. Hello
Yep,
there.
yep. And this time, we'll be doing the Star Wars Purge comics, starting with the first two Purge comics. The next EU podcast will be the last two. But for now, it's just the first two. So, without further ado, let's begin with the first Purge comic, Star Wars Purge, released in 2005 by John Ostrander in terms of the writing department, and in terms of who drew it was Douglas Whitley. So, without further ado, here is the plot of Purge. Well, Order 66 has been issued, Jedi are being hunted down, and, well, some clones are chasing some Jedi, and the Jedi Tsui Choi, he pretty much, well, killed several of the clones that were chasing him. Then he encounters one Jedi called Boltor Swan. They pretty much discuss what's going on, and they decide to meet up with other Jedi. Meanwhile, Darth Vader is interrogating one Jedi. He wants to know the location of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Doesn't get shit from the Jedi, so he kills him. And Palpatine is like, don't obsess about the Jedi, especially Obi-Wan, as that's a remnant of Anakin Skywalker. And then Palpatine goes, and then Lord Vader gets a notification that there's going to be several Jedi reuniting on Kessel, and that Obi-Wan will be there. And so he goes there. Several of the Jedi are reunited on Kessel. Rob Leodarte, Cialan West, Maki Shalas, Kofi Arana, Justus Farr, of course, Tsui Choi and Bolta Swan are there. So they discuss what they need to do. Kill the Sith is pretty obvious, that's one option, but they don't want to get into the revenge, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, while they're discussing, apparently the Jedi that organized everything, Master Shaddai, she, well, sent word to Vader that they were Jedi, and, well, so the 8 Jedi will be facing Darth Vader by themselves, and Darth Vader all alone as well. This will be a battle of all ages. Now, obviously, Darth Vader wins, so no surprise there. So, yeah. But that's all I'm going to say on this one, because I don't think that you guys should read this comic, so I'm not going to show all of the issues of it. But, yeah, Darth Vader wins. No surprise there. So, Luke, what do you think of this first Purge comic?
Very strong start to this little mini-series, and I think my favorite thing about it is something that this comic has actually made me reconsider since reading it, and that would be whether or not Anakin Skywalker still lives within Darth Vader at this point, which it seems he kind of does. Something that myself and fellow SOSW co-host Captain Henson have discussed in just personal conversations is when exactly Anakin as a person died. I personally took it in a very literal way with whenever I watched Revenge of the Sith, and thought it was the moment where Anakin was literally fully encased in the armor. So as soon as that helmet goes on, to me, that's where I thought Anakin is dead and Vader is born. But in Henson's opinion, he thinks that Anakin still lives on until after he yells out no. But reading this comic, we can see that Vader is incredibly submissive to Sidious and is absolutely bent on finding Obi-Wan. Is it stated how long exactly this comic takes place after episode 3?
It's like mere days, months. Like, not that long. Oh, it's 1 month after Revenge of the Sith, actually.
A month?
Yes.
He seems actually even more bent on destroying Obi-Wan now than he did by the time of the confrontation on Mustafar, which, given what happened to him, I guess makes sense, being burned alive. And when you look at how Vader conducts himself in the fight, I'm just going to say this straight up. To people who have never read an EU comic in their lives, if this is your first EU comic and you expect Vader to be stone cold badass Vader from the OT, that's not what you get here. What you get here is dark side Anakin Skywalker amplified in Darth Vader armor, pretty much. I mean, a key moment here that I can think of is just after Master Su Choi amputates Vader's hand with the cortosis blade from just after Vader's own lightsaber is shorted out, and he uses telekinesis. You know, he reaches out with the Force to grab his amputated hand with the cortosis blade in it and plunges the blade straight into Master Kafana's chest.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is brutal, and I don't think that's something OT Vader would necessarily do.
I think maybe he would have just used the Force for Force shock or something.
But, you know, this is what we see Vader do here. It's really quite savage, for the lack of a better term.
Yes, indeed. Which I think is awesome. There was this Disney Star Wars fangirl that she pretty much said that, oh, we never saw Darth Vader be a badass before the release of Rogue One. I was
Are you
like,
serious?
what?
Okay, calling Vader a badass because of that scene in Rogue One, it looked badass, but come on, you are talking about a more machine than man space wizard slaughtering what would be our respective countries' equivalent of heroic soldiers who
It's
don't have any, you know, supernatural abilities of their own. So that's a cakewalk for Vader.
Of course, it's a cakewalk, but this fangirl, she basically had never played The Force Unleashed, the opening level, or read any of the Darth Vader comics in the EU. Her reasoning was because apparently Expanded Universe is fan fiction.
Oh gosh.
So,
Clearly, she didn't educate herself very well on the EU, then, if that's the case.
then again, it's been such a long time since I talked to her, so now I don't even know what she thinks of Disney Star Wars. I don't even know what she thinks of that shit. But anyway, so yeah, the point of that was because, well, I told her about the Purge comics and everything. She pretty much said, "Oh, that shit is fan fiction." So, yeah, because I did make the argument that we did see Darth Vader be a complete badass before the release of Rogue One, but well, you know, those that don't read the EU or have barely heard of it, they think it's just, again, either fan fiction or it's not canon. So, yeah. But yes, so there's that. In regards to the Purge comic, it's one of my absolute favorite EU comics ever, especially because it solves one of the biggest questions I've always had ever since I finished watching episode 3 and saw all 6 movies chronologically. Like, why didn't Vader seek any revenge for Obi-Wan? And this comic pretty much explains that, yeah, Vader did want revenge. It's just that, well, that revenge was gonna make him screw up even more, so he got to get rid of that obsession with Obi-Wan in order to continue doing his duty as the second Dark Lord, well, the Dark Lord of the Sith of the Empire, and being Palpatine's pawn.
Something that I think should be mentioned as a follow on from that is how Master Shaddai actually lured Vader into their trap by mentioning Obi-Wan would be there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows you how much tunnel vision Vader is suffering from at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He is so fixated on finding Obi-Wan that he will take any lead that he can get, even if it turns out to be
Fake.
what we see here, for example. Yeah, even if it turns out to be fake.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So yep, there's that. Oh, also I gotta credit the art style of this comic because I think it looks really great. So yeah, I gotta give special credit to the art style. This is the guy that also did the Star. Oh, he actually did several Star Wars Republic issues 79, 80, the Revenge of the Sith comic, even some of the Empire comics and Dark Times. Interesting. That explains why it looks so good. So.
A couple of other notable moments that I think should be talked about very quickly is one, the moment where Kof Arnar turns against Boltar because she's not willing to take Vader's life after he surrenders. But he says, "No, look at him, another Sith trick. He seeks to make fools of us again. Kill him." And Kof Arnar, he is so bent on killing Vader that he literally takes Baltar's lightsaber and kills her. So he does that, and then after Master Su Choi calls Koff out for killing Baltar like that, he says, "And now I will avenge her and all the other Jedi who have died." Like, are you serious?
Only for him to pretty much get humiliated and killed by Vader easily.
Yep, with the aforementioned use of telekinesis to manipulate the amputated hand with the cortosis blade right in the chest.
His anger pretty much blinded the shit out of him. So
Yeah, and it's kind of ridiculous because with what happened just before that, Baltar was killed with her own blade, or by her own blade, I should say, in Koff's own hands. Like, why would you do that?
Anger. His hatred was so big, he wanted to kill Vader no matter what. He wanted nobody to stand in his way, but that costed him more than he expected. But there you go.
The other notable moment I was thinking of is after the remaining, I think 3 Jedi, hurl a bunch of debris at Vader with the Force. You get Commander Appo and company rushing in, and Master Su Choi, he leaps over in an attempt to try to get to the clones, but Vader uses the hand he still has to hold Su Choi in place with the Force, and he took that opportunity to perform a saber throw, and what does that do?
It hits him in the helmet.
Yeah, hits him in the helmet, leaving an exposed eye. Think what happened to, if you're someone who's more familiar with the new canon, think an injury pretty much identical to what Vader suffered in Season 2 of Rebels.
Yeah, though this one is actually a bit more brutal because it actually shows them the mechanisms in Vader's helmet. Vader's helmet is actually supposed to be pierced into Anakin's face, actually, if you think about it. And it's actually reading his life signs and everything through it. So it's actually more brutal than what you typically see in typical Vader cosplays or even in Episode 3. So, yeah, just keep that in mind.
I understand why Vader is keeping his back turned from the clones. He doesn't want them to see his exposed eye, but I genuinely wonder how frightened out of their wits they would be if Vader did turn around and they looked straight at deformed skin and implants with the Sith eye.
That'd be something. So, there is that. Anyway, so anything else to mention on this comic, Luke?
Probably just a quick thing with the very last scene between Vader and Sidious. You see with how submissive Vader looks, with him hanging his head as low as he does and things like that. That definitely seems more like a Anakin Skywalker type thing rather than a Vader thing. Because again, OT Vader doesn't do that.
He did at one point in Return of the Jedi, you remember. Not only did he kneel to Sidious when he arrived in the shuttle, but also in the Death Star observatory room when Sidious pretty much said, "Your work here is finished. Go back to the command ship and await my orders." "Yes, my master." He pretty much bowed down before leaving. So this is really something new. He always has done it, even in DLT. And also, don't forget in Episode 5, he also kneeled when talking to Palpatine in the hologram.
I meant specifically tilting his head down when standing up. But Palpatine does reflect on Vader's behavior throughout the entire comic at the end, and he says, "This fixation on Kenobi, that is a part of you, that is still Skywalker." And there's a bit of a pun here, because Palpatine literally says, "You must purge it from yourself."
Yep. So, there you go, Luke. And yeah, now this being the first Purge comic, you could actually read this one without having to read the other Purge comics, actually, because it works as a simple one-shot. So if somebody wants to read just one comic and in one issue from start to finish, no problem, you can read this one. But because this Purge comic apparently was pretty damn great, apparently Lucasfilm wanted to do more, and more they did. So the next one is, well, Purge Seconds to Die. So, shall we get on with that one, Luke?
I think we should.
Okay, you want to narrate the summary?
I'll try.
Okay, keep it short.
So, this comic, Purge Seconds to Die, is centered on a young Keldorian Jedi who we actually find out to be Shar Kun, the niece of Jedi Master Plo Koon. And she and her uncle possess a very strong bond via force telepathy. And we see that she has a very vivid memory with flashbacks, and for a good chunk of the comic, she gets the exact order of things that she remembers incorrect. But when she eventually goes through all of her memories, and we get to a point during wartime where Shah doesn't want to fight anymore, her uncle Plo asks her to see if she can research who the true enemy within the Republic's circle is, because this comic basically recaps up to Operation Nightfall, and she, while doing research, feels her Uncle Plo's death in the Force, and then 501st clones start coming in and tearing the Jedi library down, and Shah even recalls seeing Anakin kill Jocasta Nu. So, cut to many years later, we see Shah pretend via hologram to feign an appearance of falling to the dark side to Sidious. However, we then cut to present day where Vader is hunting Shar Kun down, and he knows full well what Shah was trying to do. So after fighting off some really weird-looking monsters, have you any idea what those are, General?
I know what they are. I'll tell you later what they are.
Okay, so Vader is fighting off some monsters which Shah was hoping would cripple Vader, which would eventually give her an advantage when it was time for Shah to face him herself. But, I mean, they kind of did, though with Vader being Vader, they didn't pose much of a threat. And then Shah eventually reveals herself. So they engage in a rather epic duel, and Shah actually manages to slash Vader at the back. And as the duel progresses, they clash blades, and it gets to the point where Shah leaves herself exposed, and she is caught in a telekinetic choke, and Vader impales her in the chest. But as she dies, what does she see, General?
Well, she apparently sees the future. What will happen in the Star Wars timeline. Everything from the OT all the way to post Return of the Jedi era. So, yep. Pretty much, she saw pretty much everything.
And upon seeing that vision, Shah basically accepts her death, I think, because she says, "The future does not depend on me. There is no death. There is only..." And if you know the Jedi Code, you know what those last two words would have been if she had lived to speak them.
Yep.
So Shah dies and Vader is left a smoking ruin, and Vader reports this to Sidious. And Sidious dismisses Shah's vision and says, "We Sith now control the Empire, and through it, the galaxy. Our rule will never end. That is my vision." And Vader just submits to it.
Yep. So, our thoughts on it. Luke, wanna go first?
I definitely prefer this comic over the previous one, and I think it's because it's far more singular in its focus. As in, you've got Shah as the primary focus, and it makes it much easier as a reader, I think, to connect with characters in this comic, rather than with the previous one where you have a small group containing several Jedi.
But then again, the focus of the previous one is Vader. So.
This one is more the Shar Kun story,
yes.
rather than another Vader story. Finding out about Plo Koon's lineage. That's another really cool thing as well, by having Shah there, because as far as I know, this comic is the only one that delves into Plo's family in any way.
Yeah, indeed.
And the fact that Shah's ability with Force telepathy is so strong that she literally saw the future, I mean, that's something.
It is something indeed. Now, my thoughts on this comic. I like it, but I don't prefer it over the first one. Two reasons. One, the previous one had answered one of my long awaited questions, which makes it more special to me, aka why didn't Vader seek out revenge against Obi-Wan? We know for the first comic why. Second reason, I prefer the art style in the first comic more than here. The art style here is not bad, but I do think the first Purge comics art style was better. So that's why. It's a different artist. That's why it's different in this one. So, yeah. So those are my two reasons why I prefer the first one. So, other than that, yeah. So other than that, this one was a great read. No disappointment. Fun fact: this one came out 4 years after the first Purge comic. Can you believe that?
So this one came out in 2009.
Yes, I can't even believe that.
It's a bit late for a sequel, but better late than never, I suppose.
It is late. So that's why I thought the first Purge comic worked very well as a single one-shot story, because it seems like it was, but they wanted to make more later on. So, yep. John Ostrander was the one that wrote Purge Seconds to Die as well. Not only the first one, but also the second one. So it's no surprise the story is just as good, if not better. So, yep. Indeed. So, any other things to mention on this one, Luke?
Can't think of anything.
Okay, well, now I guess we go into the expanded universe connections of these two Purge comics. Now this gets interesting because there's fairly several. For two one-shot comics, pretty impressive the amount of EU references that these have. First and foremost, the several Jedi featured in Purge and Purge Seconds to Die, especially the first Purge. Some of them appear in the Star Wars Republic comics. For example, Rob Leodarte, Republic issue 61. Tesui Choi, he appears in Republic 50 as well as Jedi Count Dooku, but he actually comes from Jedi Council Acts of War. Yeah, that's that old. Damn, impressive. Bolter Swan was actually first mentioned in one of the HoloNet News, HoloNet News Volume 531, number 49. So that means that's her first ever mention in Star Wars. Her appearance was actually the Attack of the Clones comic. So there's that. Then Shaddai Podkin, she actually first appeared in Revenge of the Sith and in Republic issue 80. So there's that. Cielan West, the first Jedi that was killed by Vader in the first Purge comic. She appeared in Star Wars role-playing game as well as Star Wars Invasion of the Adventure game. And her first actual appearance is from the Star Wars role-playing game core rulebook from Wizards of the Coast. Yep, Wizards of the Coast. Think about that, look.
And here I thought the RPG game books didn't really matter that much in the context of the EU at this point.
Look, do not underestimate the role-playing core rulebooks of Wizards and Fantasy Flight. They add plenty of lore and continuity to the expanded universe, so don't underestimate them.
This is admittedly very unrelated, but I'll just quickly throw this in. There is one RPG game book that I was aware of before this, which was Domain of Evil. But that was the only one that I knew about.
Okay, so there's that. So all those EU references that I mentioned are from the first Purge comic. The second Purge comic, Shah Kun first appeared in Star Wars issue 39, aka Star Wars Republic 39, before it was called Republic. She actually is from the Stark Hyperspace War. Yep, the Hyperspace War. So there's that. She also appears in Clone Wars Adventures video game. Oh god, that MMO RPG from TCW.
MMO? Really?
Yes, mentioned only she appears there, but yeah.
I played that game and never once did I hear a reference to Shah Kun.
Well, apparently there is one there, so you have to seek it, but whatever. That MMORPG is dead, so who gives a shit? Okay, so those creatures you were asking about, Luke, the ones that attacked Vader in Seconds to Die, those are actually the Ceton, which are basically the inhabitants of the lowest levels of the Coruscant underworld. They used to be human before they turned into those creatures that you see there. They actually
So,
first appeared in Darth Maul's Shadowhunter.
so basically, so say the name of that species again. Sorry,
Ceton. C T
Ceton.
H O N.
Right. Right. So Ceton. So basically, Coruscant's equivalent to rat ghouls.
Kinda, except they're not poisonous.
Well, humans turn into monsters in the lowest levels of the given planet,
Yes, but
and
they're
both planets.
not. Yes, but they don't infect you by biting you or anything like the rat ghouls do. So that's what I mean that they're not infectious.
I know, but like the similarities are there. Really
Well,
ugly creatures who used to be human beings in the lowest levels of a planet that has, a very rich utopian city area.
fun fact: Wikipedia says that the Cetons are actually kind of similar to the rat ghouls of Taris Undercity. So your comparison was not too far off.
Yeah. They don't look anything like the rat ghouls though, so
Obviously not, but the idea is similar. So yeah,
mm,
but yes, the Cetons first appeared. They were first identified as that in Darth Maul Shadowhunter, but their first ever mention was in the illustrated Star Wars universe, which is basically one of those. It was basically a reference book of sorts that featured art from Ralph McQuarrie and text by Kevin J. Anderson, from 1995. So there's that. And also another connection that these Purge Seconds to Die does is it pretty much makes canon the expanded universe that Anakin killed Jocasta Nu, as we saw in the Episode 3 video game. Because if you
mm.
remember, Episode 3 video game, because it was an adaptation of Episode 3, it was debatable if several of its parts were either canon or not. This comic pretty much confirms that, yeah, the way we saw Anakin kill Jocasta Nu in the video game, that's exactly where this comic pretty much got that from.
So, but then what about the episode 3 novelization and comic book? Did either of those depict Anakin killing Jocasta?
Nope.
No, right.
So, no, it's the video game.
So the video game is the only source material for this comic to draw from in that sense.
Yep.
And yeah, Jocasta dies at Anakin's hand in pretty much the exact same way, being
Yeah.
lifted up with the Force and being impaled through the chest.
Yep, exactly the same way. This comic pretty much made it canon. So, yeah. Indeed. Any other EU connections you can think of, Luke? There should be several others. Oh, okay. Obviously, the vision that Shao Kahn got at the end, it pretty much showed post Return of the Jedi, which not only had Luke Skywalker, it also had Mara Jade, had Han Solo, Leia Organa. It also had Saba 17, which is one of the Jedi that were pretty much Barabel Jedi Master from the New Jedi Order. That's basically from all the way into New Jedi Order, by the way. So basically, this comic also it pretty much references New Jedi Order, which is amazing. I mean, that's awesome.
You've got Kyle Katarn and Karan Horn present in that vision as well.
Yeah, indeed. So, and Silgo as well. So basically, it pretty much references the Jedi Academy trilogy, New Jedi Order, Thrawn trilogy because Mara Jade, like several references. So yeah, indeed.
I think that's it for EU connections.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it on these two. Definitely more than expected, but there they are. So, yeah. So, I guess now we go to the conclusion. So, Luke, go ahead.
These two EU comics were surprisingly good, I have to say. If you seek more knowledge about Vader in the Dark Times era, then I think these two comics are very solid examples of to go to, and some of the characters that we get, like Baltar Swan in the first comic and Shao Kahn, who is the central character in the second. I think it's really cool to see the adventures of Vader tying up the loose ends via these comic books, and well, we'll just have to see what happens with the next two Purge comics.
Yep. Indeed. Okay, as for my final thoughts, well, these Purge comics, they're great. My favorite is the first one, but second one is also a great read. Definitely worth giving them a read. You can go read them online if you want, or grab the Legends Epic Collection from Marvel, which is the Empire Volume 1. It includes the Purge comics in there, all four of them. So you can definitely read them there. And so yeah, this I don't have much more to say because these comics they're one shot pretty short, but they're definitely worth reading. They're awesome, especially if you want to see Darth Vader kicking ass. So yep. And so with that in mind, well, this is the first EU podcast after the episode 3 podcast was ended on the Purge comics. So the next two Purge comics, we'll deal with them in next week. So without further ado, well, see you guys on the next State of Star Wars podcast. Bye bye.
Bye bye, everyone.